Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Speaking code. Yes, once again you have found your way into the fox den and awoken me from my slumber for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Starfox Radio. Yes, this is the home and the stomping ground of the Midnight Society. Yet please allow me to feed. Much better and absolutely delicious. I must thank Speaking Code for releasing me from my shackles and allowing me to now completely charge my power source. Without further ado, it is time to take a walk into the darkness.
Blow, cracks, shadows morph, fangs pierce, bleeds reborn, fury rise, health ignites, burning rays, endless nights.
When I looked into the eyes of this Dogman, there was nothing. This thing was an apex predator.
Milk road, cracks, shadows morph, fangs pierce, beast reborn, fury rise, health ignites, burning rays, endless nights.
My creatures of the night, yes. Welcome back to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Starfox Radio, the home and the stomping ground of the Midnight Society. Tonight, we have two hosts that are going to be sitting down with us. Yes, Speak in Code is in the house tonight. How are you guys doing?
Good, man. Thank you for
Doing
having us.
great. Yeah, thank you so much.
I appreciate y'all. Definitely been pretty busy on everyone's end here, so it is good to be able to sit down and try to figure out what exactly is occurring with some of the strangeness across the country. I'm going to toss the mic over to both of y'all if you kind of want to give yourself a plug, explain to the audience what you do on your own, and also outside of cryptids, whatever you'd like to plug yourself with.
I am Code Conspiracy of a Man. I'm from the Speak in Code podcast. I'm one of the co-hosts. From there ended up being four of us now. So you guys have seen Chente on here and Teddy Bear Dynamite, and then we also have Swank. So I was going to bring him on with me to kind of break the seal for us to finally be on this podcast, man. I've been chomping at the bit trying to get on here, and I appreciate you having your time and stuff. Our podcast is mostly about just random conspiracies. Sometimes we'll talk about projects or operations. We'll talk about different cryptids. We'll talk about the unknown. We'll talk about things that are goofy conspiracies, things that we think are 100% true, and things that we're just kind of up in the air about. But pretty much all in all, we have a good time.
My name's Swank. I'm with Speaking Code podcast with Code, Chente, and Teddy. And I'm just the new guy. I pretty much help Code do what he needs to do with the podcast, whatever he needs me to do. I pretty much just pretty much that guy, the garbage guy, but not really the garbage guy, but kind of, I don't know, the gopher guy. Whatever he needs me to do, I'll help him do it. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm here to do. I know a little bit about conspiracies. I'm kind of getting more into it. Code has kind of guided me in this different types of directions. He kind of schooled me to the game. He and his family members have kind of really educated me about some new different stuff, and I kind of got really deep into it and thought it was a good opportunity to join his podcast if he offered it to me, and he did. So I'm here to kind of just join along with for the ride and see where it goes with us.
Beautiful stuff right there from both of you. That's excellent. And I'm up here in the Northeast. Are you down in Ohio by Drew as well?
Yeah, I'm down in Ohio as well.
Lit. A question here is that you guys all safe down there? To everyone out there, unfortunately, that's dealing with some of the traumatic stuff. I actually got some of my hosts that are going through some gnarly stuff down in Tennessee and things. Are you guys good down there?
Weather-wise?
Just everything. I mean, did you get hit with that storm and stuff, or?
Oh no, we're good down here. We're far away from that stuff, so we haven't had much rain. We had a good amount of rain this past couple weeks, but that was just made the grass greener.
Right, there you go. That's good
For
stuff.
sure.
No, I was actually down with Jody Cook in Salem, Massachusetts, just the other day, which is pretty cool. And he is the founder of the North American Dogman Project. He's from Ohio, and actually, just recently, I was on the phone with him. This occurred before you came up on vacation. There was like a train that was spewing out some sort of gas and chemicals, like all over these houses, and his house happened to actually be hit by that. He's down in near Cincinnati, and
Okay.
they weren't able to leave their house for a bit. And I was like, geez, gross, some gnarly stuff for sure.
That's crazy. That sounds like that train wreck that happened. What was it earlier? Was it last year or was it earlier this year?
I think it was almost 2 years ago now.
It was 2 years ago now. Wow, that train that happened in North or East Palestine, Ohio, that flipped over and spilled all those noxious chemicals into the air. It was like fires for 3 days or something like that.
Yeah, crazy stuff. As great as technology is, sometimes it makes me wonder who's operating it, you know? It's crazy, crazy stuff for sure. So, well, it's excellent to hear you guys are good. And like I said, to everybody else out there, unfortunately, that's been beat up by this stuff, just try to keep your nose to the grind and just plug away. That's all you can do. Tonight,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah. Tonight, I wanted to basically ask both of you. I know where Drew kind of stands on the whole Dogman topic. It's not that I don't take interest in other cryptids and things. I just have at the moment 548 pages of encounters and things, just going all the way back from 290 BC to just a few weeks ago. And I, as a journalist, just don't have the time nor the mental capacity to fully dive into this topic and venture off into something else until I feel like we've come to a conclusion on this. But how do you feel about the whole consensus of the Dogman topic?
I'm kind of actually getting freshly involved in this dogman topic. C.O.A.D is kind of like, hey, if you want to know some different type of cryptid information, the Dogman is definitely a good one to get into. And he recommended that I come and join you on the podcast to find out a little bit more. So I'm probably a person that's wants to know a lot more. If you have the time, any type of recommendations or anything like that, I'm definitely open to hear about it.
Great stuff right there, man. And yeah, that's kind of how I think basically Teddy and Chente were more or less in the beginning. I know last time when I spoke to Chente, he actually came in with some pretty cool information. I mean, I had heard of the majority of it, but I could see he was digging up some stuff that was pretty cool. And well, I guess I'm going to just toss the mic back to both of y'all and let you pretty much take the conversation in the direction you'd like to. If you want to speak about specific encounters or if you have questions, it really doesn't matter to me. So let's do this, my friends.
Perfect. So, is there any type of connection of the Dogman and the Wendigo?
That is a very good question, and I've covered that actually a few times. I mean, is there or is it been mixed up? Is really the question I guess I would ask. Meaning, we do have a ton of reports of apparently dogmen like mimicking voices and things, which is interesting, but also that's kind of a Wendigo thing. So realistically, if someone isn't having, say eye contact or their eyes on this and they're just hearing those things, I could easily see how that's mixed up. But if we're talking about, transparency, no, there really should be no similarities at all. The Wendigo would be much more along the lines of potentially a pale crawler. And I wouldn't even put it in the same category as a skinwalker, but it would be much closer to that than a dogman.
So, would a Rougarou fall in the same category? Pretty much the same thing, but a different translation.
Another great question. And the Rougarou, we actually have a really interesting theory on that. So the Rougarou is actually more down the path of being a curse and lycanthropy. Yet, if you look at kind of when that comes over and down in Louisiana, when people are seeing these things, they would see them a lot of the times at night, which pretty much every dogman encounter. Yeah, sure. There's some during the day, but the majority are at
night, no different than any other nocturnal animal. And they were seen wearing clothes, which I think people automatically assumed it had to be a human at a point in time. But the cynocephali from 290 BC, Herodotus, as well as Alexander the Great, and all these other individuals spoke about them wearing human clothing, robes, furs, and all kinds of other stuff. And then when you look at the depictions in the Native American cultures and like the Aztecs and such, they also show these dog men and women wearing the same type of headdresses that they were wearing as well. So I think there is some sort of confusion in regards of looking at, hey, this is a werewolf or this is a dogman. There's a huge difference. Like dogmen don't go back and forth, and I don't know the most about werewolves because, again, I dive into Dogman and I don't really know how I feel about that. I, as stated, kind of think it's just been mixed in a little bit more. I mean, there are very few historical references, yet almost every European reference where they claim somebody was a werewolf really kind of falls in a line where they also said people were witches too. And yeah, we all know how that ended, unfortunately.
Right. That's some really, man, like such intricacies of what the specifics of the Dogman are. It's so detailed how much information you know. It's crazy.
Appreciate you, man. Kind words. And just as a journalist, I always preach that it's not my place to speak my opinion unless I'm asked. It is obviously part of being a journalist to form your hypothesis and theory, yet you are here to collect what's occurring. And it's not about the theory you want it to fall into, it's the theory of what's being presented to you. So, yeah, I always just try to approach things of subjective and objectively as possible. I mean, I run things by my science team. I'm a pretty transparent individual in regards of my feelings about like all this stuff. And yeah, I try to run it through all the logical things. And a lot of times it weeds out things like known animals, misidentification, hoaxes, crazy people, etc. But then you still kind of get some of those encounters where even my science team that are scientists are baffled.
I do like how you have a team of people and stuff that you guys are constantly like posting new stuff on Facebook and looking into things more, and you take things more, I think, in how would you say it? Not face value, but you guys do your research and like look more into this stuff than just being like, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory, or it's just like a random cryptid where it's like it could be real, it could not be real. Like you guys are coming out with like kind of evidence where you kind of how would I explain it? You believe more so that it is kind of like the Tasmanian tiger, right? Where it's an animal that's considered a cryptid because it's been seen by some, but they haven't been able to like capture it and make it an actual like part of the animal kingdom, I guess, in a way. Is that how that you would say?
Ooh, coming in with the heat right there. And actually, something really interesting for you about the thylacine is Forrest Galante. I'm a big fan of him. Don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's been on Rogan's show before. He's a biologist, does all kinds of amazing things. He actually has a theory that a lot of the supposed chupacabra sightings are actually Tasmanian tigers, meaning at a point in time there was an animal ship that was carrying illegal animals for trade and it crashed down on the southern border, right pretty much in the territory where everyone's been seeing chupacabras. And the thylacine, Tasmanian tiger, looks very similar to that, and especially if it ended up having mange or something. So, yeah, that is really interesting. And now to round back and try to really fully answer your question, I believe it's a lot of things. I mean, 11,000 years, for example, is just nothing, okay? And the short-faced cave bear, cave hyenas, the Dinopithecus, all these gnarly animals of the dire wolf only went extinct, supposedly, in scientific terms, 10, 11,000 years ago. That's literally look up the read up for it. It's almost like they're just like, well, yeah, I guess they're no longer with us, and they just decided to roll with that. But for example, the short-faced cave bear, all that is a much better version of a grizzly bear, 12 to 14 to 15 feet tall. It's faster. It spends around 90% of its time in the caves. Come out, get food, go back in. So in actuality, the environment in the caves hasn't changed in some spots in thousands or millions of years, okay? Yet also, why would they have a problem with catching smaller animals now when they're faster than the grizzly bear? If they had to take down massive elk and things before, they would have no problem with taking down an elk or a moose now and also pulling it back into the caves. And like our spelunker says, we don't know anything about caves. We know less about the caves than we do the ocean and outer space, and we know nothing about that. And only around 10% of cave systems actually come back out to the surface. So there's so much area for animals to just go in and roam all around. So we lean in the direction that none of those animals just mentioned went extinct. Dire wolves aren't related to modern day canines, so you wouldn't get canine DNA from that. Hyenas are not related to canines or felines. They're related to mongoose and weasel, so you're not going to get canine DNA from that, which they both look like canines. The Dinopithecus is a giant baboon. You're not going to get canine DNA from that. And also, like around 40 or 50 million years ago, is when the Amphicenoids, which were called the bear dogs. So the Amphicenoidae was nor bear nor wolf. It was a tweener, and from its hips, it's believed to have been very capable of being quadrupedal and bipedal, which is how we have a ton of reports that these things run. And again, bears, no relation to canines at all now, but yet they look canine-ish. So we think those are still kicking around. We do know for a fact people that are rich at points in time had exotic pets. In the 80s, a ton of people were having tigers and all these things around here. Then there was a law saying you can't have these exotic cats anymore. So what did people do? They released them into the wild. A few years later, they're like, yeah, you can't be doing that either. You either need to put them in a zoo or euthanize them. Okay. So just think, right? A hyena, a lot of people don't realize they are actually the dominant predator in Africa. Okay. They are literally like 90% successful. Their packs have been seen in like 160 plus, was one of the largest ones. They fear absolutely nothing. Okay. So now take them out of Africa. Africa gets cold at night too. Put them in Arizona now, right? Enough where they wouldn't be interbred. They would actually be able to successfully breed, which some rich people, would grab a bunch of them, for example. And what if they escaped, right? There is nothing in Arizona, there is nothing in California in these environments that would cause any sort of detriment to a hyena. If a hyena is dealing with a lion, you think a mountain lion's going to do anything to it? Yeah, right. Okay, buddy. I mean, gray wolves and things are super amazing, and timber wolves, but they couldn't take on a hyena. And I mean, yeah, sure, grizzly bears, but as I just said, a pack, even 10 hyenas would destroy a grizzly bear. So, yeah, we believe those are being seen also. And they have escaped from when people had exotic pets. I mean, back in 2006, Jody Cook, the founder of the North American Dogman Project, found a really large baboon skull in the middle of the forest that had been shot in the back of the head. Okay, so what was this? Did a hunter see that and do that? Or was this somebody's pet that got out of control and they brought it out there and did that? Either way, what was this baboon skull doing in the middle of the forest in Ohio? Okay, so yes, baboons are up here. I mean, we have footprints that are baboon footprints. What are they doing in North America? Same thing, hyena prints look very much like bear prints. So again, we have some of those on file. So we believe throughout history, you did have something that falls into a lot of these sightings. But then also you have, like I said, the cynocephali, which are described by numerous people throughout history that are prevalent as being a canine-like hominoid species, and that would be separate from the things I just named, but still under the term dogman, because all of that falls in, whether people are seeing one that looks like a hyena, a baboon, bear man, bearzilla, coyote man, fox man. That's all still the terminology of the dog man. I mean, that's not Linda Godfrey, rest in peace. She even said she didn't roll with the term dog man yet, because as just stated, almost half of the things I just named have no sort of canine relation whatsoever. So if somebody has seen a hyena like dogman and they all were able to get the DNA, yeah, it wouldn't be canine.
Holy crap. I'm like, I couldn't find the unmute button quick enough. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have a couple questions. Um, man, it really like makes me wonder. All right, so you talked about the different like things that lived here in the like thousands of years ago, right? If not millions of years ago. But have you ever heard of the American Serengeti? It's a book by Dan Flores. It's called The Last Big Animals of the Great Plains. He talks more or less of like the pronghorn antelope, gray wolves, bison, coyotes, wild horses, and grizzly bears that were around North America, all during like, I don't know, prior to the 1800s, before like Yellowstone became like a major area and like the the rest of the West was populated. But I heard that there was also like we had different types of, I think you said hyenas here, the baboon. I mean, I wonder if all these places or all of these different types of animals could have lived here as well. Like the what is the one? It's like a large sloth.
Hmm.
Like I wonder how many other animals were a part of that that we think were extinct. And then you mentioned the cave stuff. Like I didn't even realize. I know how big caves can be, but I didn't even. I I don't think we can comprehend seeing a cave in the entrance of it. You don't know where it goes. Imagine like the uh the Grand Canyon, but all underground. The vast majority and size of that. Now you're like, oh well, of course things can hide in there. I mean, they know it. They can probably see in the dark, like all these different things. And then you mentioned the what was it? Dinopithecus? Di-
Dinopithecus.
Yes, I never knew about that. I'm like, and if those things are able to hide out, I'm like, oh my gosh, I never even put two and two together. Where like I always thought that baboon didn't really quite look like a normal ape, like a gorilla or like a chimpanzee and stuff like that. But to even compare that to the dogman, that's like mind blowing for me. I'm like, I never even thought about doing putting two and two together that way.
Beautiful stuff right there, man. And yeah, just look at a yellow baboon. A lot of people don't realize that here in North America, men are taller than they are in the rest of the world, okay? So in the majority of a lot of cultures, men are under 5 feet. And a yellow baboon, yeah, when it stands up on its hind legs and pushes itself up, it's the size of a man in a lot of spots in the world. And I encourage people to look up baboons. They have pointy ears. Yellow baboons also have nocturnal vision to survive against leopards. They have huge, long canines. They have hands and they have large manes and they make crazy noises. And I've seen some baboons that legit act like werewolves. I watched a couple in an Airbnb sitting there. One was eating while his girlfriend or whatever was in the other room. All of a sudden, this massive baboon, you see it originally climb off from the outside of the security camera, opens the window, comes in. This dude doesn't know what the heck to do. The baboon just looks at him, rips open the fridge, starts grabbing this massive chicken and eating it. This dude just tries to stand up and go in the other room. The baboon's like, "Whoa." And the guy just sits down. He's like, honey, stay in there. She's like, what the heck was that? He's like, stay in there. Then the baboon just picks up this massive turkey. I'd assume it was way bigger than a chicken. It was huge. And then it climbs out the window, climbs across, jumps down, and then runs off. And in a lot of other countries, baboons steal children and they also steal wild puppies. There's been instances in India where baboons and monkeys have raised puppies and animals that were not native to their group, wolves. And basically, as they got older, these animals protected them as they became weaker. So they're super smart. And now the Dinopithecus was massive. Okay. And there's still reports actually to this day that in very secluded areas of South Africa, people report seeing these. And I don't know why people think that these animals wouldn't have came up on the land bridges as well, just like any other animal did. And they all use cave systems, and we're big fans of cave systems. Hyenas love caves.
Can I ask you some questions on encounters and like maybe some of your favorite encounters?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, before I forget, there was a raccoon that was the size of a Volkswagen at one point in time as well, like a Volkswagen Beetle. And there was also a hyena that was the size of a small rhinoceros, and one that was the size of a polar bear too. So
Do you know those names at all?
I actually cannot pronunciate some of them fully correctly yet, and I try not to use scientific terms until I'm able to say them properly. But yeah, you can look those up right online with a simple search, just being like, hyena the size of a rhino and hyena the size of a polar bear, and you're gonna see it, and it will tell you like, when it supposedly lived and such.
You were saying that there are these different species that seem to not fit in with what category and genus they're put in. Like you said, hyena. It's like hyena, raccoon. What were the other things? What baboon? These like creatures seem like an amalgamation of different types of species that kind of get lapped in with whatever they kind of closest resemble, but they do not match that actual type. And it seems like I don't know, kind of mankind kind of falls kind of in that type of category because we don't fit in really anywhere either. So it would make sense that something like a Dogman would fit somewhere in there, almost like a missing link type of. I don't know if that's kind of a stupid
No,
thing
that's
to say.
great, man. No, that's excellent. And to make a point, right? I've said this before. We do know what kangaroos are now, okay? But same thing with baboons. Let's say all three of us have never seen either one of those animals, right? Never. It's never been documented. And we are over, let's start with Australia. And from the waist up, you see a kangaroo bust up out of the foliage. Its chest looks like a bodybuilder. It's got long human like arms with raccoon like hands and claws. It's got a snout. It's got pointy ears. Well, potentially, that could look canine ish. No relation whatsoever. Now, let's go over to India. Same thing. A massive baboon pokes its head up from the bushes, steps out bipedally, drops down to quadrupedally. It's got bent back canine like legs. It's got a massive mane. It's got an elongated canine like snout, and they make very strange noises. So, again, yeah, no relation whatsoever, but two people that aren't educated about the topic, yeah, they're going to say it looked like a canine, but it's not.
Kind of like that giant ground sloth. It looks like a huge. I mean, it looks like a sloth, but it's huge like a bear, like even bigger than a grizzly. I think they were, I want to say like 12 feet tall, or maybe even taller than that. They're insane looking.
Yeah, and I've had a few people ask potentially because I guess there was a hypothesis floating around if they could still be around and if they were dogman oriented. Yeah, those things did exist, but the only problem with them is sloths are so slow. So I mean, if one of those things did exist, that out of all the animals we mentioned would probably be the easiest to document for sure.
Yeah, true.
I was just going to ask about if there are any specific encounters that are documented that I can look at. Like, okay, nowadays we have photo evidence and all this different stuff that's kind of around here. Is there anything that you've seen like visually that kind of is automatic confirmation for you, or is this kind of like I'm just playing devil's advocate with this now? Is this just based off of scientific information that you've kind of found with your science team, like, oh, this thing truly does exist, or do you have some form of actual proof that I could kind of, I don't know, pry into the situation and kind of look for personally any type of, oh, well, in 1974 there was a video of something on April 6th. This was a dogman that was categorized or there was a picture taken of it or something like that. Because I mean, we know that with Bigfoot. What about the Dogman?
To answer your question, I don't really take too much stock into, say, images of actual supposed dogman because I broke down in a video, I think I sent it to Drew, of how I was able to make a hoax up just working on a music video with my little brother without even putting effort into it. I mean, we were using a werewolf mask. He looked out beside the tree. His eyes were already glowing. Literally looked like a dogman thing. I went in, removed the transparent logo from a Cabela trail cam, put it over top of this image, blended it, boom, there's your little hoax right there. So that took me 25 minutes of my time. And that's why I really don't say too much stock into the supposed unknown animal images. I mean, we can't debunk or fully verify them, but when you look at those footprints, those are some of the things that our science team, our biologists, and our environmentalists are unable to verify. And same thing with the vocalizations that we have that don't fall into any categories.
Those pictures are freaking sick. It helps a ton.
Terrifying.
Yes.
Terrifying in some aspects. I'm like, oh my gosh. I know people can't see this right now, but this is, whoa.
Yeah, anyone that wants to see all that stuff. So if it's not too gory and things, I put up those images throughout almost all my videos, depending on what we're talking about. But if everyone wants to see all that stuff amongst the things that I cannot show on my page, all you got to do is go to the NorthAmericanDogmanProject.com. I mean, we have images up there of a coyote pack that was massacred, all kinds of things, cows and cattle that have just been destroyed, but things I'm unable to show on YouTube. So, as stated before, if people are ever like, oh, well, you were just talking about the coyote massacre, why didn't you show the images? Well, because I cannot, but you can go to the NorthAmericanDogmanProject.com and see everything.
So there is a correlation between like a werewolf and a dog man. Or am I misunderstanding that or misappropriating that?
No, I would say I believe the werewolves are more dark magic oriented, meaning you're just really diving into some gnarly, crazy stuff. And dogmen are just a undocumented species that has lived beside humankind since the beginning of time, according to the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Indians, the Asian-based cultures, the Native Americans. Werewolves are, you would have to have, like I said, been cursed. You transform and you now are a raging man with the powers of a savage beast. But the more you do it, the more you lose your humanity, and eventually you're unable to supposedly come back. But there's different variations. Some look more like the Wolfman in the past and like the Benicio del Toro. Some look more werewolfish. They don't have tails. And like I said, that's definitely more out of my realm. But those are things that I've heard and been taught from people like demonologists that work with us, etc. And dogmen are, like I said, they're an animal. They don't go back and forth. I mean, they're smart. They've been known to set traps and things, but they have tails and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, there's definitely a big difference between skinwalkers, dogmen, and werewolves for sure.
What I'm coming to learn is as I'm learning more from C.O.A.D and everybody and actually going in and doing my own research, a lot of the things that we look at today is kind of like folklore or lies, like dragons and stuff like that, or even like fantastical type of creatures that are in like D&D and stuff that we have like correlations between connections of cryptids and such. It's like there's like a thing in D&D called a kobold, which is kind of like a little tiny, like a wolf man, almost kind of like a hyena man. And it seems like we don't come up with these creatures out of nowhere. These things had to have existed or come from somewhere. It's not like the consciousness just creates this stuff out of nowhere. Just it's wild fantasy. It has to be inspired by something.
That's a good observation right there. And yeah, before we do let you guys get back to your busy schedule and things, I think falls a little bit into both categories, meaning human beings are always trying to search for the answers and comprehensions of things. And I've used this example before. Say if you were to take a animal and be able to understand how they communicate back the situation as to what something occurred, or you take people just aren't good and reliable witnesses. There's been so many different studies they've done where this one person was wearing this color shirt and driving this kind of car, and all these people said they had this hair. One person had a hat on, the shirt was this color, and everyone's like screwing all this stuff up. Again, like I said, I don't think humans fully are the best at understanding things. And unfortunately, there are people that either by choice or lack of opportunity weren't the most educated. So, say back in medieval times, well, yeah, barn owl and raccoons and animals make crazy noises. I mean, my squirrel makes insane noises, okay? Yet all of a sudden they would assume it had to be some sort of dark spirit or something that was making you sick. Like, oh, so and so's a vampire in the town, because now everyone's getting sick, even though you guys don't take baths and like everyone just poops in the river that you guys are washing your clothes in. But yeah, of course, it's got to be the next door neighbor's daughter that's passed away. So you dig her up, she's got some blood coming out of her mouth and stuff. Well, yeah, of course, that's what decomposing corpses do. But no, she's been up eating everybody, making them sick. Boom. I think sometimes, like maybe a dragon, for example, could have been someone found a dinosaur skeleton of like a T-Rex or something, I think. So yeah, there was some truth to it, meaning it was this crazy looking skeleton, but was it necessarily like a fire breathing dragon? That's where sometimes it really comes down to the group of individuals when I try to document things, meaning I really don't take too much credit into the medieval times and some of the European history during those aspects because man, those people were insane, dude. Just because someone put on a herbal balm, you were a witch, and they were like doing just beyond insane things. But then when you look at the Native Americans, right? They all, for the most part, had their heads on level. They lived in touch with earth and things. And I tend to take way more stock into their history. I mean, they spend time in the forest. They knew 100% what they saw. When I want to, I guess, learn a lot about animals and what we don't maybe know in the forest, I tend to push more to the Native American aspects because they, like I said, just seem to have a much better understanding of things. Whereas, just mentioned, I mean, sometimes human beings just, I would like to have thought that would be common sense. You don't just, put your biological waste in the same water you're bathing in and things. And of course, everyone's going to get sick, but apparently that wasn't common sense to them. You know what I mean? So they also were doing like the witch trials and things. And I don't know, it just seemed like a totally different mind frame. I guess I could see them looking more into things that might not have existed because of their radical thinking, whereas Native Americans spent every day in the wilderness. They definitely knew the difference between, like, say, a wolf track or unknown animal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories in Native American culture. I have Native American ancestry, and I remember my grandmother talking about a lot of different skinwalker stuff and a lot of different stuff that came from like Mexican culture, like the chupacabra and stuff like that too. So in terms of reference for it all being connected in some way, like it has to be inspired by something.
Don't know exactly how the saying goes that every sort of myth or legend has a grain of truth to it. Yeah, of course. Yeah, like I said, unfortunately, just as people, what's that old school game? I remember when we were younger. Oh, I caught a fish this big, and the last person says it's like a great white shark or something.
Telephone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
telephone.
So it's the idea. Yeah, you still caught something, but you just see how it kind of changes a little bit. And I've just noticed too a couple times where there's been like Jessica Jones and myself covered a case and she was informed by, because she lives in the area, that it was done by either an actual giant or a Bigfoot. But I had heard some reports that there was canine like human like tracks, strange howls, and they saw what looked to be a dog man. This happened over 200 years ago. We can't ever verify which of the three it was, but we can verify the event happened. But that's what I mean about sometimes, as when you had asked about, say, like the Wendigo and Dogman, I think sometimes things just get mixed up into the same pot.
Absolutely.
And then I was going to ask you about some of the encounters.
It's up to you, my friend. If you want to ask me a few more questions, it's good for me. If you want to keep it for when we link up again, it doesn't really matter as well. It's totally up to you, man. So
Okay. Well, I sent a link about the Youngstown, Ohio Dogman. That's kind of like the area that I'm from and kind of grew up in and stuff too. Kind of like in the, trying to think of how you would explain it, the Rust Belt. So like there was a bunch of steel mills around here, and then they pretty much, after the economy kind of crashed back like years ago and stuff, they kind of uh, they pretty much just closed all these steel mills down. So there was like a lot of like these empty ones and stuff. Just some of the stories though you hear, it's like they're like a 5 minute story and they elaborate it into like a 45-minute story. So it's like sometimes those are kind of like, you're like, oh, okay, this was cool, but it was so much information. Do you have any encounters that you have like, all right, either personal or people have talked to you about them, like one on one and stuff, or others that you've listened to that you recommend for like new listeners and stuff, especially like Swank, just kind of getting in on it? I think I heard about the Dogman my first time from the Confessionals podcast with Tony Merkel. So
yeah, no, that's great stuff right there, man. And I've definitely heard about some of the Ohio encounters for sure. And like you were saying, it seems that the people that always just go all around to every podcast and tell their encounters and such consistently over and over again makes you wonder because sometimes, for the most part, the details are changing always. And I don't know. I have my questions about pretty much any of the Hollywood type encounters that you've heard about, most likely. there's a ton of potential red flags and things amongst those encounters. It's hard because it's usually from a one-sided perspective. It's one individual. Whereas when you look back at like the Michigan Dogman in 1887, there was 11 lumberjacks that saw that, Or if you look at some of the other encounters, there were at one of the bases over in Germany that had an encounter with this dogman-like creature. There's a whole entire base that see it. I mean, those are the instances I feel like that bring a lot more clarity to the topic, because when one person just has an encounter, realistically, I mean, they control the narrative. You have no one else to ask or talk to. It's just them. And you would like to take people at face value, but I use this example all the time. I mean, you could go to any jail around the world and ask people right to their face if they committed their crime that they're incarcerated for. I'm not talking about some that might be misincarcerated. I'm talking about ones that have been put in there for being serial unalivers, and they're going to look at you to the face and tell you they didn't do what they did, even though they got like a 30 body count. Okay. So again, when it's a one-sided narrative, people control that. I mean, there's really no way to fully debunk that or prove it to be reliable, because I mean, there's numerous cases of people that were able to figure out how to hoax lie detectors, just meaning they could pass them even though they were guilty. There's other people that were actually telling the truth but just get nervous. So lie detectors, aren't necessarily always the most reliable as well. So it's tough. But when you see like a report of a whole tribe of Native Americans that see something, all right, there's some clarity to that. Or, Alexander the Great and his whole army that were supposedly battling these things, or Jason and the Argonauts, or the people over in the country of India. I mean, that's bringing some clarity to it. And now to answer your question, honestly, I mean, there's definitely a ton of good information out there. I just try to make sure to really filter out the stuff that I feel like is being embellished and what's not. So if you go to my page and you look down at the bottom of all the suggested channels, that's pretty much, there's a ton up there. Those are all the people I roll with. Those are all the people that I like their content. I like how they present themselves and the information that they bring. Again, that's just my opinion on it, but they're all really good researchers and such. So if you want to learn about whether, it's Dogman stuff or anything paranormal based, all those people up there have a ton of great content for sure.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll definitely check more of those out too.
I'll do the same, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, no, I got you guys up there as well. So that's just, I don't know, try to be objective and subjective and go into everything just being a positive and also non-invasive skeptic, meaning don't believe everything just because everyone else is telling you it occurred. I mean, ask the tough questions, okay? Meaning there's times where people don't want anyone to come to their property, etc. Okay, I understand that totally, but then why did you just tell us about this encounter? I mean, we need to potentially send over people to understand the area, all you're telling us is this occurred, yet every time you contact us, it's you contacting us. I mean, okay, you send us one footprint. Did you spend all day working on that footprint, or were there more? Why did you only take one picture of that footprint? Meaning there had to have been more. What is this, a one-legged animal that just landed and then jumped and disappeared? So that's what's just super unfortunate is, yeah, I understand about wanting to potentially, to an extent, protect yourself, but there's ways to do that. I mean, people can come up with aliases, we can modify voices, all kinds of things, but if people are just telling us what's occurring from their side of it and we can't ever really verify it, it's unfortunately not really beneficial,
Absolutely. I think I'm a natural skeptic. It took a minute for me to kind of really come to terms with certain types of conspiracies and stuff. And then I started seeing the more and more things have been placed in front of us as what be considered to be a conspiracy or some sort of thing that's a fantastical idea or whatever. It seems to be there's some like string to reality behind it, or it seems to come out that what we might have thought was a conspiracy is actually fact. Like there's so much going on in the world right now, just that we're seeing I mean, around us, you see in the media every day weird stuff that's going on right now that we heard for years was just backroom talk. Like, oh, this was happening, and so was with this person, and so was doing this, and out of nowhere you start seeing, oh, these things are becoming more validated. These things are starting to happen. Oh, this is what's going on right now. So this validates everything that might have been talked about for years. So I think truly it's only a matter of time before anything that we think becomes validated. Like, this is, if there is actual valid information out there, it's going to be found, and it's not going to be hidden. It's not going to be, so we can be skeptics at the end of the day, but the truth is the truth, and it has a frequency, and it can be felt, in my opinion, I think.
Beautiful stuff right there, man. And no, for sure. That's why I try to get the science team up in there and just try to get a lot of great minds working together, man, and just figuring things out, because it's not just up to one person here. I mean, that's why we have a team to bounce ideas and potentially hypothesis as to what's occurring. I mean, we all don't necessarily have the same total idea, as some think it might be more paranormal based, some think it more is physical, but that's why we sit down basically at like a round table and make sure to present everything and then come to the conclusions in a cordial way. So no, I encourage that to everybody, and appreciate both of y'all stopping in tonight, man, and hanging out with us here in the Fox Den. It's always great stuff. Definitely look forward to linking up again here at some point. If you do both have any more questions or anything, you can always shoot me a text or check out some of my other stuff I have up there. I tried to in my playlist, more or less. Just in general, try to answer as many questions for people without directly having to speak to them, which I'm always down to. But I figure if you're able to answer questions just by creating content and putting out information, then you're definitely doing a portion of your job correctly. So
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for having us on, man. This has been a blast. It's like every time I end up having a conversation with you, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving with learning so much more information. Or even, I mean, we talked about Dogman a lot during this episode, but then we also talked about the other things as well, as like other options, or the other, almost like the ways that people have seen Dogman or could have seen Dogman potentially.
Thank you for everyone who once again stopped by tonight for this episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. If you do enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, and share it. Feed the algorithm, and I will catch you on the next one.